Chris Brown, Steve Tasker, One Bills Live, and that can only mean one thing. Our good friend, senior producer from NFL Films, Greg Cosell, joins us as we go position by position every Friday with what's in this year's draft class. And on the docket this week, a favorite for a lot of people that want to take a receiver every single year for the Bills, wide receiver. Greg, how we doing?
Brownie, what's happening? Steve, how we doing?
Doing good, doing really good. We got a little list of guys we want to run by you because we know you know more about them than we do, and
there's always receivers. That's the thing. There's always
right.
receivers. I think more than 30 get drafted every year.
Yeah. So this year it's not like it was a year ago where they had three guys that everybody expected to step right on and be contributors and starters and number one guys right away. This group's a little different.
I mean, it seems so now. My guess is that some of these guys will turn out to be really good players. I can't sit here and say they'll be the level of Malik Neighbors or what Harrison was thought of going into the draft last year. And Adunze was considered that as well. So you don't know that, but receivers always end up playing well. There's always a group of receivers that play well. It's just a matter if you're choosing one, picking the right one. But the way the game is going now at a young age with all the 7-on-7s and all that, there's always going to be receivers.
Yeah, so let's start with a pretty big one, and that's Ted McMillan, who goes 6'4", 219, and has 10-inch hands. But watching him play, Greg, he kind of looks like a long strider with build-up speed.
Yeah, I think I don't know where guys are going to get drafted. The way I evaluated him, I think I evaluated him a little differently than most. I think he's a little more, I don't want to say explosive, that would not be the right word, but I think he's more than just a big possession receiver. The comparison that was made pretty quickly was with Drake London, and I think that he's more than Drake London. And I think one of the things he does exceptionally well, he is seamless transitioning from receiver to run after catch, and he's very, very good with the ball in his hands. So again, I'm not going to sit here and say he's Justin Jefferson or a receiver of that ilk. Jefferson and Chase would probably be considered the two best receivers in football right now. So I'm not going to sit here and say McMillan is in that category. But I guess what I'm saying is I feel like with the way I evaluated him on tape that he'd be closer to that category than to, let's say, just a big possession receiver.
Right, and that's so he does look the part. I mean, as Brownie said, he's a big dude, and is one of the elite size guys in the class. Is that kind of what sets him apart? Is his ability to play at that size?
Well, he's very smooth. You can almost see it with the highlights we're looking at.
Right.
He's not a guy. Sometimes you see these guys that are 6'4", and they're more. I don't want to say they're plotting, but I mean, look at this kid run. He's incredibly smooth. He's fluid. Like I said, you wouldn't call him sudden or explosive, but he's much more than just a big guy who's going to catch the ball in the middle of the field. And by the way, he does have ridiculously good hands. But I think there's more there. I guess what I'm saying is it would not surprise me if he became a really good NFL receiver.
Yeah, right. And you compared him, you said he's even better than Drake London, and London went 9th overall. So it'll be interesting to see where he comes off the board this year in a year that's not considered to be as strong with blue chip talent, over 2,700 yards and 18 touchdowns the last two seasons. All right, what about the Texas kid who's been moving up boards probably since the Combine, Matthew Golden, after he ran the 4.29?
Yeah, it's funny because I think I did him before the Combine, so I didn't know what he would run. I mean, he plays fast. So again, you never know how a guy's going to run. Right? I don't know how a guy's going to run. Certainly didn't expect a 4.29, but he doesn't play quite at that speed, but he does play fast. And he's a guy you can line up anywhere in your formation. He can run routes from different splits, different looks. I think he's pretty refined as a route runner. There's a sense of pace and tempo to his routes. Steve, you know what I'm talking about. One of the things corners always say is that some guys that make every route look the same, those guys are hard to play against. He has a feel for just how to run routes. He knows how to change speeds when it's appropriate. He understands the leverage of defensive backs to create separation. And I think, put aside the 4.29, he does have a vertical dimension that I think can transition to the next level. He's got sudden acceleration. He's got an extra gear. Um, to me, he was this year's Brian Thomas, not the same kind of receiver. I don't want people to think he's the same kind of receiver because he's not. But in this sense, last year I thought Brian Thomas was an ascending player when I watched his LSU tape. And I thought when he got to the NFL, you'd see that. And that's exactly what happened in Jacksonville this year. And I think Matthew Golden is that guy this year. I think he's just going to keep getting better. And I think he'll be an ascending player once he gets to the league.
Yeah, there seems to be a clutch gene to his game also because he made an awful lot of big plays at critical moments in games, whether it was I know they didn't win the SEC title game, but he made some big plays for them to keep them in that game. And then in the football playoff games, I just thought he was making clutch plays for them at critical moments.
Yeah, and he clearly got better as the season progressed. The last 6 or 7 games of Texas season, he was a dominant player.
Give us a little insight now, because Matthew Golden and McMillan probably not going to be around at 30. Maybe they will be. I kind of doubt it. So a guy that we haven't heard that much about is Luther Burden from Mizzou. What can you tell us about him?
I don't understand that, Steve. I did him last summer. Obviously, caught more balls last summer, and people viewed him as a top 10 pick coming into the 2024 season. Their quarterback situation, their pass game wasn't anywhere near as good this year, so therefore his numbers suffered. But this guy to me he's got a ton of traits. Now, this guy to me is a sudden, explosive, dynamic receiver. I don't think he has the terrifying speed of, let's say, a Jameson Williams, but there's no question that Burden can take the top off the defense. He can be a vertical dimension both from the slot and outside. He is really good run after catch. He's got elusiveness. He's competitively tough. He's 6 feet 206. He's not a little man. I mean, that's, again, I'm not making a direct comparison, but that's similar in size to Jamar Chase. I think this guy has a chance to be a wide receiver 1 with development. I mean, he also ran a 4.41. I think that coming off his 2023 season last year at this time, even though he wasn't in the draft, people would have said that this guy was a big time potential number 1 wide receiver for a team. And his traits haven't changed. See, that's the thing that always gets me. His traits haven't changed. There are all kinds of reasons why the numbers were not as good this year, but the traits haven't changed. I mean, you see the body control right here. And like I said, he is not a little man. A lot of people think, oh, slot only. That he's 6 feet 206. That's not slot only.
So if you're looking at him as NFL teams would look at him, you're thinking some of the reasons for his drop in production would be what happened around him.
Correct. And that's fair. Like I said, he still had some plays this year where you go, oh my God, this guy can be a wide receiver 1 in the league for sure. So that's the way I see him. And, I spoke to someone because someone else felt the same way I did. And they were in a position where they could check out other things, which I'm not in a position to do. I don't work for a team. And there's no negatives about him personality-wise, character-wise. So I don't understand, just me, I don't understand why he's not being talked about more, because I think he's worthy of that conversation.
All right, we've heard a lot about this player, and he's going to be off the board relatively early, but some people may line him up at cornerback, depending on what their team needs. Other teams might line him up at receiver. So let's hear about the receiver that Travis Hunter is.
Yeah, Travis Hunter's obviously, we know he's a great athlete. He's in college football, he was always the best athlete on the field. He's dynamic, he's twitchy. He's got 2 traits that every offensive coach in the NFL wants: play speed with vertical ability, high-level ball tracking, and he's super explosive run after catch. I mean, this guy goes from 0 to 60 in a heartbeat. And they threw a ton of tunnel screens. I mean, I think watching Shadir Sanders and watching their offense, I saw a ton of screens, and then somebody from a team who told me, who does this kind of work in charts, that I don't sit and chart every single play, said that they threw about 150 screens this year, which was probably one reason Sanders completed 74% of his passes. But anyway, Hunter goes from 0 to 60. It's ridiculous. I mean, and he's got short area burst. He's got accelerating speed. He can take any play to the house. He's just a great athlete. Now, will he be as great an athlete in the NFL as he was in college? No, but he's still a great athlete. And he wasn't asked to run a lot of detailed, nuanced routes in college because it wasn't necessary. Um, again, we've talked about him before. I think as a corner. I think we did that. I can't remember. But I'm curious to see how teams see him because I don't think you can play corner part time, but I think you can play receiver part time. I don't know what you guys think. Steve, you would have a
Yeah.
better way to answer that. I think
Yeah.
within the context of a defense and all the checks and coverages and all the things that go into being playing defense, I don't think you can play corner part time.
Right, and yeah, that's the thing. You send him to the defensive meetings, and you give him like 6 plays offensively, and then the next week you give him a few more and a few more. Just give him a package of plays on offense that are choreographed more. So you're right.
Correct.
You can't play corner part time.
No, and you can give him the term they use is manufactured touches. You want to get this guy the ball in space. He's just so incredibly explosive. You just want to give him the ball in space. I mean, look at the way he stopped right there. That's a trait that's always overlooked is how guys stop. It's really important for receivers and corners. Some guys take 5 steps to stop. Even guys who run 4-3 can take 5 steps to stop. And if you can't stop the way we just saw him a few plays ago, then that's a negative, and he can just stop on a dime.
Yeah. Let's move on to the Ohio State prospect, Emeka Egbuka, 6'1", 202. This guy reminds me a little bit of Khalil Shakir, Greg. I think Shakir is still more elusive than Egbuka is, but this guy screams
I would agree.
Slot receiver.
Although, with the way the game has changed, Brownie, I mean, think of teams like the Rams with all the reduced splits. So,
Yeah,
I
okay.
think of a team like the Lions, the way they use Amon-Ra St. Brown. I was actually speaking to someone, and we both agreed that if you put a guy like Egbuka in the same role as Amon-Ra St. Brown, he could probably do that. And then
Okay.
he'd be a volume receiver lining up all over the formation. This kid is he knows how to play receiver. He understands route running. He understands pace and tempo. He understands footwork. He's got great balance, great body control. He knows how to separate. He's not explosive, vertically. That's not his game. But this guy, and I made it a point to listen to him talk at the podium at the combine. He's just so mature. Like this guy's a pro. But I think depending on an offense, he could line up anywhere. I mean, think about it. Let's say an offense like Sean McVay. Think about Puka Nacua. Puka Nacua, they don't line him up as a true, let's say, boundary X and say you win 1-on-1 against good corners. They don't do that with him. But yet he does line up outside. It's just their outside sometimes is closer to the formation. So it almost seems like he's a slot receiver. And I think Egbuka could be that same guy. Now, again, not a direct comparison to Nacua. I'm thinking how he can be deployed within the context of an offense. But to me, this guy's going to be a 10-year pro and just be a really good player.
Yeah, and then we've got 2 guys on our list that are from the same school, Iowa State, Jaylen Royals and Jayden Higgins. I'm sorry.
Higgins and Jaylin Noel.
I'm sorry, that's right.
Yeah.
Jaylin Noel and Jayden Higgins. They both the same school. Give us a little rundown on them and how is Iowa State with 2 guys of this quality not better throwing the
They
football?
were good this year. They were actually really good this year. Jayden Higgins is one of my favorite receivers in this draft based on tape. I did him last summer, and then I did him this year. And I think that I never know where guys are drafted. 6'4" and an eighth, 214, ran a 4.47, tremendous vertical jump, really excellent athletic testing measurables. Again, at 6'4", you don't think of explosive and sudden, but this guy is an effortless mover. I mean, he's probably more of a speed cut route runner than a, sink your hips kind of guy, but he knows how to separate at the top of the route stem. He's very refined. There's a kind of a nuanced physicality to create separation. I'm not going to sit here, Steve, and say he's Michael Irvin, who was a master at it, but he's sort of got that little nuanced feel of how to do that without it being offensive pass interference. So he gives quarterback space to deliver the football. He runs better than you think. I think this guy could be a boundary X receiver in the league. He was one of my favorite receivers, and when I watched him last summer, I knew nothing about him. He was a transfer from Eastern Kentucky, so I knew absolutely nothing about him, and I really liked this kid's tape for 2 years.
Okay,
All right.
because it's funny you say that because I really like his teammate Jaylin Noel. little bit smaller, runs faster.
Yeah.
I mean, this kid, I didn't know him very well either, and boy, I really liked him a lot after I watched his tape.
Yeah, I do too. He's a totally different guy, obviously. You get caught up in people immediately saying, well, he's a slot receiver. Now, he did have 82 of his 120 targets at Iowa State this year did come from the inside, which makes you think, okay, slot. But again, gets back to the conversation we had about Egbuka. But this guy's got sudden lateral twitch. He can work between the numbers exceptionally well, but he's also got accelerating speed. He ran a 4.39. It shows up on tape. He ran slot fades. Again, he's not little, so he can line up outside. I mean, he's 5'10 and a quarter, not tall, but he's 194. That's not a little man. I think this guy can line up anywhere in your formation, and I agree with you, Brownie. This kid is explosive and twitchy.
Yeah, I mean, he had 8 plays of 50 yards or more. I think that was over it was just last year. Sorry, over the last 2 years. He had 8 plays of 50 yards or more. I mean, that's a stretch the field guy as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, and well, other thing too is he's really good run after catch. He's explosive. So I can't remember every one of those plays, but I'm sure some of them were run after catch because this guy, when he catches the ball, I mean, he's not quite Travis Hunter, but he goes from 0 to 60 pretty quick.
Yeah. And give us this one last guy, Jack Bech from TCU.
Yeah, Jack Bech was a fun guy to watch because this guy with the ball in his hands, I mean, he takes that part of the game extremely seriously. He just does not want to be tackled. So you're dealing with a guy that is not explosive, but when you look at the size, the hands, the physicality, the competitiveness, the run after catch profile that he presents, again, he could develop, depending on team and scheme, into a volume receiver. I'll bring up Puka Nacua again. I mean, Puka Nacua was what, a 4th or 5th round pick? I mean, this guy, depending on the team, could end up being a volume receiver. I mean, you want to get the ball in this guy's hands. I mean, this guy's another guy that makes contested catches through contact. He makes seamless transitions into run after catch, where the physicality and the competitive toughness just jumps off the film. I mean, this guy's a fun guy to watch. There's a physical presence about him. Sometimes you watch a player and it's not an X and O thing, but you just go, there's a physical presence about this guy. That's the way Jack Bech is.
Yeah. I didn't see a time on him.
No, I didn't either.
He had a 34-inch vert, 34.5-inch vert, 10.5-inch broad jump.
He didn't run at the combine.
He had a sub-7-second 3-cone, which for a guy that tall was a little surprising to me. He ran a 6.84 in the 3-cone.
And even the 20-yard shuttle was really good at 4.21. That's pretty good. So, this guy's not just like a big, stiff guy, but he was a fun guy to watch. I mean, guys like that play. I mean, whatever team they're on, again, that's very dependent on the volume, the target volume and all that. But this guy's going to play in the league.
Does this guy seem like a guy who comes in, makes a little bit of a splash in the preseason for a team because he'll be drafted a little bit lower than these other guys we've been talking about? And then, end up either on the practice squad bouncing back and forth until he develops, or do you think he's ready to go from day one?
I think depending on how he's deployed, he could be ready to go from day one.
He'll be on a roster. He's going to make a 53-man roster.
I think he can play because he's so physical. I mean, I think that part of the game won't be, a big change for him. I think he's going to understand that pretty well. And the guy catches everything. I mean, I think he had 93 targets this year. He had one drop.
Yeah.
All right.
And I remember it. It was just one of those fluky drops. Sometimes even guys with great hands, they just have a drop. It's one of those things.
I bet he remembers it too. Yeah.
And you know what? And I bet he's the kind of guy that it bothers him to this day because it was a routine catch because I can see it in my mind.
Yeah. Well, Greg, listen, thanks for shedding some light on some of these receiver prospects. We appreciate it, and we'll catch up with you next week. I believe running backs are on the docket for next week, so we'll catch up with you then.
All right. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it as always.